The Witches by Roald Dahl. Chapter 19, Mr. Jenkins and His Son. Mr. Jenkins came striding up to our table with a very purposeful look on his face. "Where is that grandson of yours?" he said to my grandmother. He spoke rudely and looked very angry. My grandmother put on her frostiest look, but didn't answer him. "My guess is that he and my son Bruno are up to some devilment," Mr. Jenkins went on. "Bruno hasn't turned up for his supper, and it takes a lot to make that boy miss his food." "I must admit he has a very healthy appetite," my grandmother said. "My feeling is that you're in on this as well," Mr. Jenkins said. "I don't know who the devil you are, and I don't much care, but you played a nasty trick on me and my wife this afternoon. You put a dirty little mouse on the table. That makes me think all three of you are up to something. So if you know where Bruno's hiding, kindly tell me at once." "That was no trick I played on you," my grandmother said. "That mouse I tried to give you was your own little boy Bruno. I was being kind to you. I was trying to restore him to the bosom of his family. You refused to take him in." "What the blazes do you mean, madam?" shouted Mr. Jenkins. "My son isn't a mouse." His black mustache was jumping up and down like crazy as he spoke. "Come on, woman. Where is he? Out with it." The family at the table nearest to us had all stopped eating and were staring at Mr. Jenkins. My grandmother sat there puffing away calmly at her black cigar. "I can well understand your anger, Mr. Jenkins," she said, "and any other English father would be just as cross as you are. But over in Norway, where I come from, we are quite used to these sort of happenings. We have learnt to accept them as part of everyday life." "You must be mad, woman!" cried Mr. Jenkins. "Where is Bruno? If you don't tell me at once, I shall summon the police." "Bruno is a mouse," my grandmother said, calm as ever. "He most certainly isn't a mouse!" shouted Mr. Jenkins. "Oh, yes, I am," Bruno said, poking his head up out of the handbag. Mr. Jenkins leaped about 3 feet into the air. "Hello, Dad," Bruno said. He had a silly sort of mousy grin on his face. Mr. Jenkins' mouth dropped open so wide I could see the gold fillings in his back teeth. "Don't worry, Dad," Bruno went on. "It's not as bad as all that. Just so long as the cat doesn't eat me." "Bruno?" stammered Mr. Jenkins. "No more school," said Bruno, grinning a broad and asinine mouse grin. "No more homework, and I shall live in the kitchen cupboard and feast on raisins and honey." "Bruno," stammered Mr. Jenkins again. How did this happen?" The poor man had no wind left in his sails at all. "Witches," my grandmother said. "The witches did it." I can't have a mouse for a son!" shrieked Mr. Jenkins. "You've got one," my grandmother said. "Be nice to him, Mr. Jenkins." "Oh, Mrs. Jenkins is go crazy," yelled Mr. Jenkins. "She can't stand the things." "Well, she'll just have to get used to him," my grandmother said. "I hope you don't keep a cat in the house." We do! cried Mr. Jenkins. "Topsy is my wife's favorite creature." "Then you'll have to get rid of Topsy," my grandmother said. "Your son is more important than your cat." "He certainly is!" Bruno shouted from inside the handbag. "You tell Mum she's got to get rid of Topsy before I go home." By now, half the dining room was watching our little group. Knives and forks and spoons had been put down all over the place. Heads were turning round to stare at Mr. Jenkins as he stood there spluttering and shouting. They couldn't see either Bruno or me, and they were wondering what all the fuss was about. "By the way," my grandmother said, "would you like to know who did this to him?" There was a mischievous little smile on her face, and I could see that she was about to get Mr. Jenkins into trouble. "Who?" he cried. "Who did this?" "That woman over there," my grandmother said. "The small one in the black dress at the head of the long table." "She's RSPCC!" cried Mr. Jenkins. "She's the chairwoman." "No, she's not," my grandmother said. "She's the Grand High Witch of all the world." "You mean she did it? That skinny little woman over there?" shouted Mr. Jenkins, pointing at her with a long finger. By gad, I'll have my lawyers on to her for this. I'll make her pay through the nose. Oh, I wouldn't do anything rash, my grandmother said to him. That woman has magic powers. She might decide to turn you into something even sillier than a mouse. A cockroach, perhaps? Turn me into a cockroach? Shouted Mr. Jenkins, puffing out his chest. I'd like to see her try. He swung around and started marching across the dining room towards the Grand High Witch's table. My grandmother and I watched him. Bruno had jumped up on our table and was also watching his father. Practically everyone in the dining room was watching Mr. Jenkins now. I stayed where I was, peeping out of my grandmother's handbag. I thought it might be wiser to stay put. Chapter 20. The Triumph. Mr. Jenkins had not gone more than a few paces towards the Grand High Witch's table when a piercing scream rose high above all the other noises in the room, and at the same moment I saw the Grand High Witch go shooting up into the air. Now she was standing on her chair, still screaming. Now she was on the tabletop, waving her arms. What on earth's happening, Grandmama? Wait, my grandmother said. Keep quiet and watch. Suddenly, all of the other witches, more than 80 of them, were beginning to scream and jump up out of their seats as though spikes were being stuck into their bottoms. Some were standing on chairs, some were on the tables, and all of them were wiggling about and waving their arms in the most extraordinary manner. Then all at once they became quiet. Then they all stiffened. Every single witch stood there as stiff and silent as a corpse. The whole room became deathly still. They're shrinking, Grandmama. I said, they're shrinking just like I did. I know they are, my grandmother said. It's the mouse maker, I cried. Look, some of them are growing fur on their faces. Why is it working so quickly, Grandmama? I'll tell you why, my grandmother said, because all of them have had massive overdoses, just like you. It's thrown the alarm clock right out of whack. Everyone in the dining room was standing up now to get a better view. People were moving closer. They were beginning to crowd round the two long tables. My grandmother lifted Bruno and me up so that we wouldn't miss any of the fun. In her excitement, she jumped up onto her chair so that she could see over the heads of the crowd. In another few seconds, all the witches had completely disappeared, and the tops of the two long tables were swarming with small brown mice. All over the dining room, women were screaming, and strong men were turning white in the face and shouting, "It's crazy! This can't happen! Let's get the heck out of here, quick!" Waiters were attacking the mice with chairs and wine bottles and anything else that came to hand. I saw a chef in a tall white hat rushing out from the kitchen, brandishing a frying pan, and another one just behind him was wielding a carving knife above his head, and everyone was yelling, "Mice! Mice! Mice! We must get rid of the mice!" Only the children in the room were really enjoying it. They all seemed to know instinctively that something good was going on right in front of them, and they were clapping and cheering and laughing like mad. "It's time to go," my grandmother said. "Our work is done." She got down off her chair and picked up her handbag and slung it over her arm. She had me in her right hand and Bruno in her left. "Bruno," she said, "the time has come to restore you to the famous bosom of your family." "My mom's not very crazy about mice," Bruno said. "So I've noticed," my grandmother said. "She'll just have to get used to you, won't she?" It was not difficult to find Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins. You could hear Mrs. Jenkins' shrill voice all over the room. "Herbert!" she was screaming. "Herbert! Get me out of here! There's mice everywhere! They'll go up my skirts!" She had her arms high up around her husband, and from where I was she seemed to be swinging from his neck. My grandmother advanced upon them and thrust Bruno into Mr. Jenkins' hand. "Here's your little boy," she said. "He needs to go on a diet." "Hi, Dad," Bruno said. "Hi, Mom." Mrs. Jenkins screamed even louder. My grandmother, with me in her hand, turned and marched out of the room. She went straight across the hotel lobby and out through the front entrance into the open air. Outside, it was a lovely warm evening, and I could hear the waves breaking on the beach just across the road from the hotel. "Is there a taxi here?" my grandmother said to the tall doorman in the green uniform. "Certainly, madam," he said, and he put 2 fingers into his mouth and blew a long, shrill whistle. I watched him with envy. For weeks I'd been trying to whistle like that, but I hadn't succeeded once. Now I never would. The taxi came. The driver was an oldish man with a thick, black, drooping mustache. The mustache hung over his mouth like the roots of some plant. "Where to, madam?" he asked. Suddenly, he caught sight of me, a little mouse nestling in my grandmother's hand. "Blimey," he said, "what's that?" "It's my grandson," my grandmother said. "Drive us to the station, please." "I always liked mice," the old taxi driver said. "I used to keep hundreds of them when I was a boy." "Mice is the fastest breeders in the world. Did you know that, ma'am? So if he's your grandson, then I reckon you'll be having a few great-grandsons to go with him in a couple of weeks' time." "Drive us to the station, please," my grandmother said, looking prim. "Yes, ma'am," he said, "right away." My grandmother got into the back of the taxi and sat down and put me on her lap. "Are we going home?" I asked her. "Yes," she answered, "back to Norway." "Hooray!" I cried. "Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray!" "I thought you'd like that," she said. "But what about our luggage?" "Who cares about luggage?" she said. The taxi was driving through the streets of Bournemouth, and this was the time of day when the pavements were crowded with holiday makers all wandering about aimlessly with nothing to do. "How are you feeling, my darling?" my grandmother said. "Fine," I said, "quite marvelous." She began stroking the fur on the back of my neck with one finger. "We have accomplished great feats today," she said. "It's been terrific," I said. "Absolutely terrific."